Welcome to this webinar of the ICA, the International Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design Association. The ICA is a professional, non-profit global organization for all things related to CPTED. The webinar is one of many programs run by the ICA for preventing crime and creating safer places. My name is Dr. Manjari Khanna Kapoor, and I'm a director at the ICA. I invite you to take advantage of the many programs we offer by joining the ICA. You can use the link provided on the screen or contact us if you have any questions. Also, a brief disclaimer that the views expressed in this presentation belong to our guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the position of the ICA. The ICA does not assume legal responsibility for the speaker's statements, the intellectual property, or the information presented today. So let's begin with the webinar. I am excited to welcome all of you, our attendees, and our panelists. We have with us Dr. MACARENA Rao. She's the president of the ICA. Elizabeth Miller, she is the secretary at ICA. Melissa Valdez, who is the president of CPTED Mexico. And our moderator for the day, Dr. Tim Pascoe, also a director at ICA. I will now hand over to Tim for today to say a few words, welcome our panelists, and take over the proceedings. Over to you, Tim.
Well, thank you, Manjari. And Manjari is our technical expert for the day and also one of our esteemed panelists. And if there's any issues, hopefully she will help us out. My name is Dr. Tim Pascoe. I've been a CPTED researcher and academic for over 30 years and nearly as long as an ICA director. I'm also a director of the Institute of Community Safety based in the UK, from where I'm coming from today. And I have the privilege of chairing today's webinar and the rather scary job of trying to keep our formidable speakers on time, especially as I'm the only male today. So today's webinar brings together the leading CPTED women from across the globe. The webinar will work like this today. I will be chairing it, but each of our panelists will lead on one key question, supported by the other panelists. Once those three key questions have been answered and discussed, I will open up the floor for questions from all of you, the audience and the participants. And I'm asking you, so please put your questions in the Q&A area on the Zoom, and then I will run through those with the panelists to get their expert opinions. So it's probably more than enough about myself and me. Manjari has briefly introduced who our people are. I'll briefly introduce our experts again, but I'll leave it to them to give perhaps a 1 minute bio description of who they are and where they're coming from. But as I already said, they are our leading female practitioners across our world. We'll kick off perhaps with Dr. MACARENA Rao, because she is our president of the ICA, and she's here representing Chile in the Latin American region. So Maca, you've got 1 minute to say how wonderful you are.
Thank you, dear team, Dr. Tim Pascoe. Hello, Melissa. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Manjari. Hello, everyone who is connected with us today in this so relevant webinar for the International CPTED Association. It is very pioneer and unique, this webinar talking about CPTED for women. That is a super relevant agenda in all cities all around the world. And we have enough evidence from the past 21 years of CPTED practice to discover and to highlight that probably women use public space in a different way than men. And also they suffer in a different way the levels of violence depending the regions of the world and the country they are. So we have so interesting topics to discuss today. My name is Dr. Macarena Vargas. I am an architect. I have a master's degree in architecture and also a PhD in urbanism. I have been working applying CPTED the past 21 years, mostly in the Hispanic regions, in different Hispanic countries. I have been super lucky to be part of the CPTED family and ICA family since the year 2000. And I am super honored to be today the international president of the International CPTED Association. The ICA, the ICA, is a big family, and we love to have new members and to connect with different members all around the world. We have an international ICA board, and I want to highlight the incredible work that Mateya Minjak, our executive director, women also, is doing day by day. Mercedes Escudero, the president of CPTED Mexico, and Adam Veronica also from Portugal, our brand new ICA director. These women are making an incredible work in different countries of the world, spreading the CPTED methodology. And also, I want to thank you deeply, all the men that are working with this so empowered woman, and to highlight that Dr. Tim Pascoe is the most brave man that is here with us today and is blessed with these women. This is my resume. I want to highlight mostly work that we have been doing in the Hispanic region with Melissa Valdez, talking about how to make the perception of safety of different women in Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Brazil, among other countries, how to increase the perception of safety, because we discovered that women feel very unafraid, and they feel that they can be murdered, they can be abused, sexual abuse in public spaces. So we will talk about that. That's for me, dear team.
Excellent. Thank you, Maca, or Dr. Rule, should I say. Perhaps we'll now go to Dr. Manjari Kapoor, and a quick minute on your background, Manjari. Manjari, I'll just tell you, is our lead across the whole of Asia in India.
Thank you, Tim. Very briefly, I'm a practicing architect, academician, and a professor at schools of architecture in Delhi, and a security integrationist by focus. So I am trying to pioneer the cause of security through architectural design, propagating the concepts of CPTED and counterterrorism through design. For that purpose, I have put together an organization, a non-profit organization called Association for Building Security India, which is the first Asian chapter and the official Indian chapter of the ICA. I'm also a director on the board of the ICA, the lead of this webinar committee, the newsletter committee, and member of many of the other committees, doing a lot, keeping in touch with what ICA is doing all over. I'm also the author and chairperson of the Secure Standards for Design of Buildings and Audit Systems. And I hope that you all enjoy the webinar we've put together today. Thanks, Tim. Back to you.
Well, thank you, Manjari. I think we'll go to Elizabeth Miller next. She's our North American expert and a practitioner beyond belief, and she's going to give us her quick, brief background.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, Elizabeth Miller. I work with the city of Saskatoon currently, so I'm a senior planner. That's my background. I've been practicing CPTED since I kind of fell into it by mistake way back in the mid-90s, so it's been a long time. And I've been working at having it ensconced in the official community plan and some of the things that we have through the municipal government. So that's kind of where my experience comes from, but also through working with communities outside of the municipal environment, and really look to have that grow and have people really understand what that means, that crime prevention is not just locks and lighting, that crime prevention includes health, it includes education, it includes community development, it includes all of those things. And I also cringe a little bit when somebody calls me an expert, because you can always learn more, and I'm in good company today, so I hope to give a little bit, and I also hope to get a little bit back. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. And you are an expert. So now we're going to go to our final speaker, but certainly not the least, but the most equally as important. We have Melissa Valdez, representing our expertise in Mexico. So Melissa, just a few words on your expertise.
Well, hi, it's a pleasure to me to be with this amazing women talking about CPTED. I am Melissa Valdez Lopez. I'm president of CPTED Mexico Northwest. I'm also an architect with a master's degree in urban planning. My research focuses mostly in the perception of fear in vulnerable neighborhoods and its incidence in crime. I'm also a CPTED practitioner since 2017 and have the pleasure of being trained by MACARENA Rao personally. I'm currently a professor in La Salle Northwest University. I do architecture work in the city, and I'm also a consultant both in CPTED and urban planning in the municipality of my city.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies. Having heard all that experience and background, I'm even more frightened of trying to roll you into other times. But we're now on to our main, or our middle section, where we're going to ask 3 key questions, and each of our participant teams will lead on one of those questions, and everybody else will join in. And then after that, I'm going to open the floor to a flood of questions. So leading on to our main 3 questions, the first one, I think I'll aim at you, Manjari, if you don't mind. And that question is, what is the link between CPTED and women's security?
Thanks for that question, Tim. I'll just start by sharing my screen. Just allow me a minute to do so. Okay, so I can see that my screen is visible to all.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so very briefly, I would like to just take us all to the very beginning, to the very basics of CPTED, to introduce the concept of how CPTED relates to women's security. And if we were to take the first generation principles of CPTED, say starting with natural surveillance and access control. I'm not going into the details. I assume that people are aware of the first and second generation principles. So, when you have urbanscapes like this, where for an access control, the natural surveillance is being killed, that is, these spaces are not for women, are not safe for women. When we kill surveillance and we, for the sake of access control, the surveillance dies, it is not good for security, women's security. On the contrary, this kind of a setup where the surveillance, the access control, the image maintenance, everything is in sync with CPTED principles, automatically such places would be conducive to women. Getting another quick look at the principles now, territorial reinforcement. So not only are we talking about eyes on the street, lighting and all that, but what is important is that spaces which are as per CPTED, which are in sync with CPTED, would be designed for women. They would be frequented by women. They would be owned by women, and they would give a sense of belonging. So such gender-sensitive places, which are following all of CPTED first generation principles, are typically will turn out to be gender-sensitive and will turn out to be places where women feel safe and they have a sense of belonging to that place. Now, just touching upon the territorial reinforcement part. So territorial reinforcement in this case would be, like you can see on the screen in front of you, this is a space which has equality for all genders. They feel equally like they belong to that space, and it's not as if these places are not designed for them. So this is a very important aspect for women to feel safe and to be actually spaced, to have gender equitable spaces by exercising the 4 CPTED principles and generating a sense of belonging. Now I bring you to the 2nd generation principles, which in some sense, to me, are actually what vitalize these aspects and very, very relevant to my Indian context and Asian context. So the sense of community cohesion is something which is vital to reinstate the status of women, to involve the entire community, to treat everybody therein as you would like yourself to be treated. So obviously in a community situation, when the community becomes active, then the image of women, the status of women is reinstated. In our culture, in Indian culture, the culture and traditions is a big impediment, because typically, culturally and socially, women have been oppressed and have been the lower gender. But today, it is the same community which is required and which, in the CPTED way, is now becoming instrumental in getting women back their equitability, getting them included socially, culturally, and contributing to women. So just quickly, I mean, just to give you an example, for example, if you have a community living like this house, it is so much in touch with the outside and the inside, and the urban street right outside is based on the concepts of community living, social interaction, and in this sort of a CPTED compliant background, women feel safe. On the other hand, so this is very near to the rural sort of setup we have in India, or semi-rural or semi-urban, whatever you might call it. On the contrary, look at these urbanscapes. These are hardcore, metropolitan, lonely urbanscapes, which are reflecting the selfish living models of anonymity, heterogeneity, and this, which is completely in non-compliance to all CPTED principles, is what creates women's security issues. So these are just examples, and these pictures that you see on your screens are gated communities in the suburbs of Delhi. Now, they could be anywhere in the world. I'm sure all of you would relate to them, that they are just symbols of myopic planning and development, which are leading to urban insecurities, not limited to women, but very, very, should I say, exaggerated for women. That's my answer to your question, Tim, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Manjari. That's a very thought-provoking. From what I gather, that it's all about CPTED includes spaces designed for women. We have to have gender-sensitive spaces. Gated communities negate often the community action where women often are leading and in engagements. So perhaps if we could have some views from our other panelists on that question about what is the link between CPTED and women's security. So ladies, have you got any views on that? So Macarena or Elizabeth or Melissa, who would like to kick off?
Yes, Tim, I would like to kick off. I think it is very linked. I appreciate much what Manjari shows, because she described with images very clear the first, second, and also CPTED generation that is coming and arising, but first and second generation mostly. And I think the link is super connected with the main objectives of CPTED methodology, that is to reduce crime opportunity, to reduce fear perception of women, and also to increase social cohesion. But increase social cohesion not only of the women with other members of the community, but also among women. We discovered in our Mexican projects with Melissa that women feel much safer if other women are together with them. So for women to feel safe, they need to be super connected with other women. there is a groupal consciousness in women's behavior in urban space. And I think this is something super interesting to highlight. And the other idea is that women are excellent urban perception thermometers. A woman perceive fear, for example, or confidence in a higher degree than men. In our audits and our research from the past 21 years, we discovered that if you ask a man, do you feel safe here? He can say yes, no, 5 or 6 level of perception of safety. But a woman can feel unsafe in a level of 10, 9 that is higher. And that is something very, very interesting for research and for projects, for the design of CPTED projects.
Okay, thank you, Maca. So what I'm hearing at the moment is using CPTED, we can design gender sensitive spaces for all kind of forms of gender, using CPTED methodology, second generation, etc. We can get super connected and sure that we have the views of women on board. And women are particularly good at perceiving elements of insecurity. Melissa or Elizabeth, have you got anything extra you want to add to this?
If I can add to what Macarena said, I think in my experience and Macarena and me experience, which is more field-oriented, I think that there's a really strong relationship between CPTED and the perspective of women, because women are the who participate more actively in community activities of CPTED that we have implemented. And they bring more information to the table that we as a CPTED practitioner can use to design a project that really have a complete vision of the environmental needs and problems. And sometimes the women bring us the solution of those problems that are in the environmental. So women are better to establish closer relationships between the community, which is an important aspect that we have learned. And I think as women, the women are a really great asset when it comes to collecting information of data of the area that it's going to be intervened with CPTED, and it helps us to help build a city with a gender perspective that is more inclusive and responds to problems. And especially that has with perception of fear, as Macarena had said.
Well, thank you, Melissa. So what you're suggesting is women have a far greater window on the community and the kind of community information to build upon the kind of more physical urban variables. So we get a more comprehensive feel of engagement. Okay, perhaps on to you, Elizabeth, to finish this question off.
Thanks, Tim. I'm just going to jump off where Melissa left off. I think you're right. I think women do have more information sometimes about the community and how it works. They do, in my experience, have quite a different perspective than men. And typically, although they have that information, getting that information to the practitioner is not as easy as it sounds sometimes. And women typically don't have the same opportunities, or maybe they experience more barriers in participation. And I think sometimes as practitioners, we have to be really aware of that and make sure that those voices are heard. And also I would caution people to not lump every woman into the same pot. Like we're quite different. I remember a long time ago when women's issues came up, and it was my boss kept saying, "What are these women's issues? Like, aren't these people issues?" And he was right. He was trying to balance that. They are people issues. If we make our community safe for the most vulnerable of us, it's safe for all of us. And I think we really have to pay attention about how we do that. So if you're going to have a meeting, maybe just having the meeting isn't enough. Maybe you have to, you know, have a potluck. Maybe you have to have childcare. Maybe you have to go to the community instead of having them come to you. We have to make some of those adjustments so that if we want those, that voice, if we want that information that Melissa referred to, then we have to go and get it. Sometimes we have to, it takes longer, it takes more resources, but it's worth it in the end. Thanks, Tim.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks everybody for that first question, which was answering what is the link between CPTED and women's security. And very clearly from our answers there that we can see spaces can be designed for women, they can be designed for gender-sensitive spaces, and anybody who practices CPTED in first, second, third generation CPTED knows that engaging the community, maximizing the information you can get, maximizing those links with the community is key to any successful CPTED project. And as we can clearly see, if you engage women in that exercise, they are very keen to participate, keener than men maybe, and they have clearer links and potentially more information there. And their voices have to be heard if you are in the CPTED world. So it's key to getting information, it's key to get the community heard, it's key to engaging and making any projects happen. I'm going to go on to my second question now, if that's okay with everybody. And that question is, does CPTED raise women's voices in the urban... Oh, sorry, Manjari, you've got a comment.
I just want to tell the viewers that you can post your questions while along the session in the Q&A box. Instead of posting them in the chat, you post them in the Q&A box and they will be answered at the end.
Well, thank you, Manjari, and I'm looking forward to a flood of questions. And I'm expecting more towards the end. I can see some coming through already. So our second key question, and we got 3 key questions before we open it to the audience. The second key question was, does CPTED raise women's voices in the urban agenda? I think I'll look to maybe you, MACARENA, to kick us off on this one.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Tim Pascoe. I will present a super brief presentation with images about a project that we did with Melissa. Just to start discussing that question and answering, we did a super interesting project for Zacatecas last year for UN Women in Mexico. And the idea, the client wants us to develop 3 safe routes for women in 3 municipalities in Zacatecas, Mexico. And why Zacatecas? Because it's one of the most criminogenic states in Mexico, and Fresnillo, for example, is a municipality, the most criminogenic municipality in Mexico. So the talent was very, very high, and the idea was to develop a very holistic approach. What we did with a team based in Chile and with Melissa and Melissa's team in Mexico, we did a hybrid intervention using online courses, CPTED courses, to empower the training, the CPTED training to families, to public functionaries from the state of Zacatecas. And Melissa did a tremendous, incredible, brilliant field work and design work with all the information that we gathered. So we started for 3 months. We started training sessions with women functionaries and also some men from Zacatecas state. And it was super interesting because the first idea was that they could get the CPTED glasses. We mean the CPTED glasses, how they can see environment in another way using CPTED principles, first, second, and third generation. What do you think, Meli? Do you want to add something?
Well, this project and like other projects that we had in the region of Latin America have are distinguished by the fact that it's women who participate the most and integrate into CPTED projects, and we can see how women concerns are aligned with the urban agenda. They bring topics like poverty and education and gender equality. They are really concerned about the local businesses, and we see that alignment with the urban agenda. Well, this project we did it with United Nations, and United Nations have these 3 municipalities which are very vulnerable municipalities. Zacatecas is a state in the center of Mexico that has the highest perception of fear in the country, and is the second one and most violent, I think. That's why we were called to do this project. And we did 3 master plan. We developed 3 master plan in 3 different communities. And if you can put the next one, you can see in the pictures that it's mostly women who are participating in the activities. And kids, the women kids, and we were able to do drawing workshop and safety audits. We applied the urban safety survey, and I think we did a few interviews also. And if you can put next one.
But yes, I want to add to your comment, Meli, before putting the next one, is that one instrument that we applied connected with the safety audit you mentioned, Meli, is the Cloud of Dream. The Cloud of Dream is an instrument that we developed with architect Carlos Gutierrez and other professionals in the year 2006 that allows not only to have the voice of women regarding dreams of projects for making better the environment, also to have the voice of children. And that is super relevant and very connected to CPTED for women, because many women are mothers, are wives, or are single, but they take care of other children. They are part of communities, and they take care much about children. So the Cloud of Dream is the picture that Meli is showing here in the middle, and it's super nice. It asks children to dream their city, to dream, in this case, the new safe routes. So, go ahead, Meli.
Yeah, the Cloud of Dreams allow us to identify the fears of adults also. So because they are passed to the children, so we can have these identify these fears and problems that are happening in the area. So as the result of these activities and putting into practice these CPTED tools that we have with communities, we developed 3 master plan that the results that we have, although they corresponded to the environmental needs that we as a CPTED practitioner identify at the beginning, the women who participated gave us more information about the shortcomings of the places that they were affecting the perception of safety and helping crime to be committed. They were the ones who were being affected even financially, since they had to look for part-time jobs that allows them to return home early for fear to be in the streets at night or in these hours of dark. We may have fear for them and also their children. But one of the results that caught our attention most was that there were this need for the community to implement art in these areas, in the urban spaces. As you can see in this master plan and the other ones, they are really colorful. Community and women's and children ask us for murals and art to be implemented in the area. So we think that it was in opposition of the state of the areas that are right now. They were really gray, they're lacking urban design, they didn't have any signs or urban furniture. So through all these tools that we implemented in the community, they formulated a identity for them, and it was based on all these colors that you can see in the urban spaces. Not just we give a response of the needs that they have and the problems, but they also incorporate the community identity through all these colorful designs.
And also, Meli, something that is super relevant to highlight is that they combine, for women, it was not only very relevant to prevent crime, opportunity, and violence in urban spaces, but also to prevent murder by traffic crashes or injuries. So it was very, very relevant how we develop pedestrian routes according with all the legal system and prevention system for traffic problems in the cities. So it is a very win-win combination.
Of course, yeah, the people that participate in this project were really aware of the lacking of urban design and all the problems that had. So in the master's plan, we were able to resolve those kind of more urban aspects of design.
Mm-hmm. So connecting with your initial question, Tim, we think that CPTED can raise the voice of women all around the world with these kind of projects and other projects, and not only for women, also for vulnerable groups. For example, children that are super, super relevant also, and all vulnerable groups in an urban space. So that's for us.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Maca. It's very clear to me then that CPTED provides the opportunity, maybe using the tools such as the Cloud of Dreams, to allow women to actually engage and often to make projects happen, have their loudest voices in our urban agenda. I wonder what you think about that, Elizabeth.
I think I really like this project. Well done, and I think that it can raise women's voices in the urban agenda, but only if it's applied properly. Only if the practitioners really see that as important. Because if they don't, then they're not going to make the extra effort. And from a planning perspective, we know that some of the designs that we've had in the past were not conducive to children or women or alternate forms of transportation. And so as the planning profession has grown, we've changed that. And so I really think that making sure that knowledge is out there so that practitioners can utilize the strategies that they have appropriately. And in the municipal context, which is where I live, it's ensuring that those that are at the higher level understand the importance and the fact that it's going to take a little bit more resources and a little more time, because we have to do things. It's not like, well, call a meeting, everybody came, they told us what they wanted, and then we went and did the design. It's a little more complex than that. And I think that's one thing that I really want practitioners, especially starting practitioners, to really understand that it does take more time. Thanks, Tim.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Manjari, what do you think?
Yeah, great comments from all the three panelists. I'll just add another dimension to it as I understand urban agenda. So we must understand that women constitute ballpark 50% of the population. But this 50% of the population is also the most influential when it comes to families, for children, for the seniors. So that makes them really vital players in the entire economy and the social structure. So CPTED, by way of its first generation and second generation dimensions like community and social factors, brings in that sensitivity to women, women being symbolic, not just women, but of all the sensitive genders like LGBTQ and so on and so forth. So being multidisciplinary, CPTED addresses the needs of the women for them to contribute to society and economy. At the same time, CPTED also is the tool or the bridge to showcase the need of the society and the culture to make, especially gender sensitive places, or rather should we say placemaking for women. So it's a two-way process. It's voicing their side to the women and the women's side to the society. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Manjari. I think you did an exceptionally good summary there with your idea about that bridge, and the tools of CPTED are bridging and bringing all genders together to ensure all voices are heard, and particularly those women's voices are heard. And if we want the community engagement, the women are absolutely the key leaders in that section. So I'm going to lead on to my third question today. I think that's going to aim at you, Elizabeth. And that is, how does CPTED work for women in your own experience?
Sure, Manjari's just going to bring up the slides. I wanted to just kind of set the context for my part of the world. And I mean, I'm not speaking about, I don't have experience with Canada as a whole, but I dug out some statistics for Canada and just to set the context. Violence against women can have a significant impact both on the victims and on the Canadian society. And I think that's one thing that people don't necessarily think about. It affects their mental health, it affects physical health, it affects their ability to maybe get a job. And if they're afraid to take the bus, they maybe can't take a job, or they've got children and they're fearful of leaving their children by themselves. And sexual violence is, of course, always high. Some groups of women are at higher risk than others. As we know, as I said before, we're not one big homogenous lump, and violence against some segments of the female population are higher than in others. Racism, homophobia, transphobia, all those types of what's the right word? I guess discrimination can affect women and how they operate in the community. And if they can't operate fully, then that affects the community and Canadian society as a whole. Next one, Manjari, please. And these are I just pulled these from the basic StatsCan website. Victimization rates are higher for women than men. Homicide rates are much higher. 85% of the crimes committed against women are committed by people they know, and that's really quite different. Also, a lot of the crimes are intimate partner violence, either when they're together or they're not, and so that happens behind closed door. It doesn't necessarily happen in the public environment. So how does that fit in with CPTED? And there's only a certain percent, a very low percentage that are actually solved. So that actually impacts whether people are even going to report or not. Next slide. Thanks, Manjari. So in Canada, where I live, the first picture there, so we're doing safety audits at 40 below, which maybe the rest of my panelists don't actually have to experience. We're doing a night audit. The second photo on the top, if you're a woman and you have to walk through an urban environment that looks something like this, then maybe you don't want to go out. Maybe you limit where you go and what you do. And how do we ensure that that doesn't happen so that people have free reign? As I think Melissa or Macarena mentioned, if you look at the rest of the pictures, you can see that the majority of the participants, and I thought hard about this, the majority of the participants that we would get out were female, which was really interesting, although meetings tended to be a higher number of men who were participating as opposed to women. The first picture on the second row, we actually had childcare. So we had childcare, so we could go out to the audit. We brought people in. We have childcare for you. You can come and participate in this activity. And the second photo on the bottom is actually the kids. So we did the adults first, and then we did the kids, and took them out on the audit, just to see the difference between what their perspective was and what women's perspective was. When we do our safety audits, we always really try to ensure that we have a diverse group. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes we really have to work at it. And the idea for meetings and for safety audits and any of the other CPTED strategies that we use, sometimes we do separate things because of the fear that some groups have or their ability to be more open. But I like to do things together so that, for example, just to be really blunt, so that the women can have their say, the men can hear what the women have to say, and then they can kind of get a different perspective. And of course, that's a very broad brush statement. But if women are to be full partners in planning the city, then we need to ensure that they're all included. And that, of course, includes safety. If they feel unsafe, they may not go out onto the street. So then we have less people on the street. They don't want their kids to be on the street. So we have less people in the parks. The kids don't learn how to sort of manage on their own because they can't go. Their parent, like, nope, you can't go to the park by yourself. That's no way. So, we don't have alternate forms of transportation set up for them. We don't have safe routes for them, that type of thing. And they can pass that fear along to their children. Remember, lots of people growing up in my municipality, we have an east side of the river and a west side of the river. And often people were told, don't go to the west side, don't go to the west side. And that was a fear that was passed along from parent to child. And then it was just repeated and repeated. And so those are some things you have to overcome. So childcare, meeting space, time of your meetings, the type of activity, sometimes separate activities. Good to have a mix so that everybody can understand what we're doing. But I think that that's been our experience. And when women participate, when they come to our CPTED workshops, very much like what Macarena and Melissa did with their group, we would have a CPTED workshop before we did any other strategies like safety audits or things like that, so that the community had a language, like a vocabulary that they could use around safety, and everybody was using the same language. And so it tended to be a little more efficient and effective when that happens. And it's always so interesting to hear when people, we've been in a community and then something's happened and they come back and they use that language with the city administration to say, we need help with this, and first generation, second generation, third generation, we need more community cohesion, and this is how we want to get it. And it's always very satisfying to me when the community basically uses our own words to sort of say, hey, you're not doing a great job here. You need to fix this. And that's kind of a short. Is there one more, Manjari? Yeah, there is one more. And what we found, and it's not super easy in our municipal or in Canada to do this. It is in some communities, is that a community meeting with food is always a good combination and always will draw people to a meeting and really get good information from that. We've also used that with kids and pizza. We serve them the pizza. We don't let them leave till we get the information that we're looking for. Thanks, Tim. That's it from Saskatoon.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And it's very clear, some very clear experience showing how that those women's role works. I'm amazed, Elizabeth, you get anybody out at -40. But very impressed, and how the tips of the trade, childcare times, having kind of targeted activities, getting some bribery of food, it will encourage people to engage. Manjari, have you got any views on this question? And I'll just remind you, the question for our audience is, how does CPTED work for women in your experience?
Yeah, so in my region, in my experience, like I showed briefly in the answer to the first question, it seems to work very well in rural areas, which are, closer knit, more community-driven or more community controlled. But in urban areas, like I showed you, the heterogeneity, the anonymity, the living in silos, and imitating Western examples without really seeing how they work for yourself, we've seen how the urban scape is lonely, deserted, non-CPTED compliant, and all the anti-CPTED CPTED principles, which tend to lead to more crimes against women. That's why we in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, in the metropolitan cities, we tend to face greater challenges vis-a-vis women's security in the areas. But in this context, I would like to introduce here a very different aspect, a different application of CPTED, which is one of the efforts which has actually earned the authors of this campaign a Cannes Film Festival Award also, a Cannes Award also, I think silver or something like that. And it aligns very well with the CPTED concepts to address a very global phenomena faced by women across the world, and that's domestic violence. Mm. So typically, domestic violence is a thing which is very difficult to address through your typical CPTED or other crime prevention principles. So in India, there is this movement called Ring the Bell, and allow me to just share my screen briefly. I would like to just quickly share with the audiences a small video about Ring the Bell. This is it's a campaign which is targeted at men, basically for men to speak up for women who are in distress, especially for cases of domestic violence, and raise their voice or alarm or attract somebody, bringing in all the principles of community, of surveillance, of all those aspects which CPTED stands for in a very unique application. And allow me to just share this video, very brief video. I hope you enjoy it.
कितनी बार कहा है तुमसे मुझे अपनी चाय गरम चाहिए तो खुद ही गरम करके पी लो क्या कहा क्या कर रहे हो तुम बहुत चलती है तेरी बहुत चलती है तेरी तुम जैसों को कैसे समझाना बेटी दाल क्या वो सही टाइम क्या हुआ 8:20 आपकी घड़ी 3 मिनट स्लो है
Bring domestic violence to a halt. Ring the bell.
I guess all of you get the basic message that the CPTED for Women movement is not restricted to women. It's a community action and it has to be driven by men. And here what we're trying to say is if you hear something is going wrong, you watch something going wrong, it's not just enough to have eyes on the street, but ears and brains and engagement. The community needs to participate, to engage, and to act for women's issues or social issues, if we were to say that, to be addressed. So it's not, women's issues are not just women's issues. They are complete society or maybe existential issues today. So that's what I would want to say from my region and my part of the world.
Well,
Back
thank
to you.
Thank you, Manjari, and I thoroughly agree. The eyes on the street, broadening that to eyes, ears, brains, engagement is absolutely key to what we do in CPTED. Our last word on this question is to Macarena and Melissa. So if you could just comment on this, and then we'll look at our audience's questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sorry, Meli, go ahead.
Okay, just a brief comment about the question. I think that in Mexico, and I'm sure in other countries, but associate from here, CPTED has been a platform for women to be heard, especially in a country that lacks that kind of spaces. We have insecurity not just in public spaces, but we don't feel especially secure with authorities. And CPTED has been like a platform where women can safely speak their needs and the problematics of the community that they live in. It's a space where women, we try to give them this empowerment to put their ideas in front of the communities and apply it in the urban space. I think that's how CPTED has been seen here in Mexico, in the regions, in the parts where I've been working on.
And just to add to Melissa's point, and connected with Manjari's presentation that I think was brilliant, and also Elizabeth, because it shows that this topic is global and we have different scenes and scenarios in different parts of the world. But I want to connect also what Manjari highlighted about domestic violence with mental health. And that has much to do with CPTED third generation. CPTED third generation considers mental public health, but also mental health that has to do with psycho-emotional aspects of each person. But in that sense, connected with women, we did many works here in Chile in the context of the COVID pandemic. And women express much mental health issues regarding different emotions, super difficult to deal with them. For example, stress, anger, fear, sadness during the pandemic context. So I think CPTED and CPTED first, second, and third generation can help much to increase women's perception of security, women's safety, but also women's quality of life and habitability. That is one of the main objectives of CPTED third generation.
Okay, thank you, Maca. And thank you all for your very perceptive answers to my and the ICA's 3 key questions. It's clear to me that using CPTED and women's role in CPTED clearly leads to spaces designed for gender-sensitive and safer areas. That for CPTED to work, it absolutely has to have women engage. They're a source of information, they're a source of delivering community issues. And although our panelists didn't say, we welcome all you lady CPTED experts who bring that perspective and ensure that it actually happens in these CPTED projects. I'm going to now perhaps open the floor to our audience for their own questions. And I hope you'll all join in answering them. And I'm going to kick off with perhaps one of my own, which is, how effective do you think CPTED principles have been in preventing particularly gender-based crimes? Anybody got a view on that before I pick on someone? So the question,
if I may answer, I think that CPTED, and because I'm gonna rely on my experience, I think that when we work with them, they are highly aware of the spaces that are unsafe, that allow us to give a proper designs to trying to prevent that kind of violence for women. And at the end of the day, building these gender perspective city is about that, about designing these spaces that are points of delinquency and crime for women.
excellent. So it's bringing there, you have a unique perspective on those issues, which leads to more effective solutions. Anybody else would like to?
Yeah, Tim, I just wanted to, so CPTED, first generation, second generation, third generation, CPTED can only go so far. And I mean, the first generation CPTED strategies will do, you know, the hard stuff. Once you get into the community development things, then you're looking more at how that affects women in other ways, like mental health, like physical health, like whether they feel comfortable leaving their house, whether they feel comfortable with their kids leaving their house, and all of it kind of comes together. And so that's one thing I think that for planners, making sure that there's community space, that there's public space, so that women and children can gather. And if there are those spaces and those activities within a community, encouraging, say, the community association to set up activities for women, daytime activities perhaps, and it allows them to connect with other people, with other women with children, and allows them to even have that space to talk to someone else. They're not sort of stuck in their apartment or their house or whatever. And that, I think, is critical if we're truly going to make a difference, is to ensure that we go beyond first generation, that we go into the community, the third generation, the community-based activities. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a view before I go on to one of our questions that have been put in our Q&A? If not, then this is a question for the Q&A area from Anna. Anna from Lisbon, I'm guessing. Anna suggests culturally women are doers, therefore more active, with more social skills, participating and expressing themselves more. Urban spaces have been designed by men traditionally. When did it change, and have you, as participants, got any urban examples that have been developed with women in mind? I'm looking for any.
I can start, Tim. I'm not sure how the rest of the world. When I graduated in planning, the majority of the planners were women. So that doesn't really fit in my experience, in my context. However, having said that, as I finished, the majority of the planners that were in decision-making levels were men. They were all men. And so were the academics, most of the academics. So I kind of see where Anna's coming from with that. I'm not sure what I would say is the addition of appropriate public spaces and making sure that they're safe. So all of our parks, all of our developments and facilities, we have a CPTED review committee. And so all of those projects have to go through the CPTED review committee, which is an interdisciplinary group that looks at the project and based on the principles of crime prevention through environmental design, and looks at how do we do that. So do we look specifically at women? No, but we try and be diverse and look at how are those things going to affect the different segments of our population in Canada.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I think also Anna's hinting at have we got any CPTED solutions that made a considered women, especially, I don't know, for example, on the public transport?
Tim, just to add to the cultural aspect, we all know as CPTED practitioners that context is very relevant for a CPTED intervention. And probably women connect much with context because they are, as Anna mentioned, very active. Taking care of children, they move, they work, are multitasking, as we say, and are super connected with cultural expression also. In that sense, I think it connects very good with accepted intervention. And accepted third generation that is super evolved, connected with art expression, for example, has much to do with that. I think we should design for the complete community, as Elizabeth mentioned, but women can add a special flavor to these projects.
You're muted, Tim.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Anybody else? I'm thinking particularly we worked on the public transport in the underground in the UK, trying to do CPTED principles to trying to design, bearing in mind that women felt fear of crime and were victims of crime far higher. And we implemented CPTED principles on kind of the public transport. I know in Latin America and India, they've also tried to apply CPTED and management principles. So that might be another example of taking women in mind in using CPTED principles. Have you got a comment on that before we go on to our next question? Yes. If not, I will go on and go on to our next question, which is particularly for you, Manjari. And this lady Deepak says, Madam, don't you think implementing CPTED strategies are very difficult in India, where we have very high urban densities of population? How can CPTED be more relevant in Indian community settings? I'm sure you're going to tell her. I'm not sure, Manjari, I can't hear you. Can other people hear you?
No, I know. I was mute. Sorry. I had clicked, but it didn't get clicked. Sorry. Thank you. So thank you for the question, Tim, and thank you, Deepak, for that question. So I'll answer it in two parts. Firstly, I would like to kind of explore this myth that CPTED is a Western concept and it is not, it is something new to India. It might today be coming to India in the avatar of CPTED, being called CPTED. We've never called it that, but the concepts, the principles, the practices of CPTED are deeply embedded in our tradition, in our culture, aspects of community living, aspects of eyes on the street, of territoriality. They are all deeply entrenched in our cultural practices and heritage, I could say that. Now coming to the aspect, yes, you are very right, that a lot of CPTED thought and concept goes into populating places, which could be probably underpopulated or lonely. And yes, in our part of the world, we have too much of population and we usually looking at the flip side and using the same principles of CPTED to control crowds or overpopulation, you know. So, but the beauty of CPTED is this, that the same concepts which are done for populating underpopulated areas, maybe in Canada, are being used extremely well to control crowds in an overpopulated area, like maybe some part of Delhi or any other part of India. So that is the, should I say, the adaptability and the versatility of CPTED is what we discover with a lot of our work in India. Having said that, I must also add here that a lot of the urban insecurity, urban fear, and urban crimes as we face being women or otherwise in Delhi or Mumbai or any metros or tier 2 cities also of the country are largely because our urbanscapes, which could be your streets, your public transportation, your pedestrian walkways, your all those public realm areas which should be populated and should be looking out for each other are either lonely, like I showed you in my slides in the very beginning, that we might have all the streets lined with residences, but there is no connection. We're cutting off that connect. We might have the availability of the eyes on the street, but there's actually nobody looking out. And if they are looking out, they're not concerned. And even if they are concerned, they're not doing it. So this is an aspect of CPTED. It just does not finish at that. There is an engagement which is required, which is being pushed by CPTED, which is what is missing now in our current day urbanscapes in India. So CPTED is very, very relevant. And if we were to just look deep into our traditions and resurrect our traditions, I think we would be good. And those traditions would actually be all CPTED compliant. I hope I've answered your question, Deepak. And if I haven't, or you have any further, I know I can't hear your side of the question, so you could write to me definitely, or any of us panelists at CPTED. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Manjari, and I'm sure, Deepak, that was very comprehensive. Any panelists want to add to that? If not, we're going to go on from one extreme to another, and a far more detailed question for our practitioners, really. And this is from Peter Murray. And he says, I'm working with a hotel group in Ireland relating to perception of fear of crime by their female guests and staying alone. Their main fear they have is using the lift, having a meal alone in the restaurant, the car location, and the main fear is the hotel room itself. His question is, are these fears, listed perceptions of crime, the same in other parts of the world for female guests? So, a very practical question.
I would say yes, in my experience, and both in traveling myself and in listening to other people. Not quite sure what he means by the perception of the hotel room itself, but certainly using lifts, eating by yourself, car parks, parking structures, that kind of thing. And actually the location of the hotel itself and, what surrounds it and how, so, the parking lot might be okay, but what's the pathway from the parking lot to the hotel? The lift might be okay, but would it be better if it was glassed and then, people could see you and people couldn't, or, maybe there's an emergency button or whatever. A lot of that can be dealt with the first generation, if you have a review, first and second generation application of those strategies. But the management of the hotel itself, I think has some really important bearings on, how do they offer, what do they offer? Like maybe there's parking spots in the garage right by the door, that they save for people that are traveling alone, or, you know, with alone with young children or something. They say, you know, here, you take parking spot number 1, which is right by the door, and then you don't have to worry about that. And of course, making sure that, you know, there's lots of things about parking garages, lighting, locks, painting, making them look good. But in general, Peter, yes, we do experience the same things, and I think there's ways around some of it. Thanks,
Yes,
Tim.
I also wanted to add to Peter's question. I think it's a super interesting question, and also Elizabeth replies very interesting. In Chile, we have the same perceptions of women that are connected with hotels in different scales and different settlements of the city. And most of the time, what we appreciate much as women in hotels is information. Finally, with very updated information, as Elizabeth mentioned, delivered by the administration of the hotel, for example, or the other communities or the apps, we can take good decisions. I was once in a hotel in Durban, in South Africa. And I stayed there for a CPTED conference, and I thought it was very safe. I didn't feel unsafe, so I went out running. And when I returned to the hotel, people said, no, it was terrible. Please don't go out. It was super unsafe. Please stay here. And I didn't know that. So my perception thermometer doesn't work for that context.
Yeah.
I felt safe, but I appreciate much at that moment the information delivered by the administration of the hotel. So I suggest that women need to have very updated information regarding safety issues and aspects in different contexts of the world.
Excellent. Thank you. We've got another question here from, it says Lake Cigaris. And the question is, have you applied CPTED principles to bus transport, which is more prevalent in most of the world? So have we applied it to bus transport, looking at bus shelters, where they're located, their lighting, that type of thing?
Yes, in Saskatoon, we're just bringing online a bus rapid transit, which is sort of a couple of spines that go east-west across the city and north-south, and that's just coming online. And all of the routes, all of the shelters, all of the you know, anything around the bus shelters, like notification schedules, public announcements, all those types of things, what the shelter's made of, all of those things are under review and going through the CPTED review committee. So that's how Saskatoon is dealing with the bus transport currently.
Excellent. Any more views on that?
We are developing a CPTED Chile team. We are developing a CPTED analysis and diagnosis for an central station of different transport, metro, train, bus, and it's very, very complex. And something that we are measuring, we are applying an audit to different people on streets, and we are asking many women. And they feel very frightened at certain times at night when the light decreases. So for that purpose, the proper pedestrian lights are very needed. And also, again, information. Women ask for updated information about bus arrivals and when they departures. For women, what is very unsafe is to stay calm in a place where they can be victim of crime, and they want to measure and analyze how much time they need to wait for a bus, for example. This is the main results for now of this project.
Okay, thank you. Looking through our questions, there is going from the practical to perhaps a wider social question that I'm sure you're all going to comment on. And that question is, what is the role of CPTED in social change and women's liberation? That shocked you all.
Could you repeat that one?
What is the role of CPTED in social change and women's liberation?
If you allow me, I'd like to start answering while we wait for others to kind of pitch in. So according to me, what is women's liberation? Women's liberation is when women are get an equal kind of an equality in society, in work, in all aspects of life. And I think CPTED is instrumental in that, because CPTED, as I look at it, affords equal opportunities to women by allowing them a safer, crime-free environment so that they can function on all their levels, because women are not limited to just contributing to the economy directly. They could be working directly, or they could be homemakers and enabling all the other workforces and the future generation in terms of the families, the children, the seniors in the house. So women play a multidisciplinary role, pretty much the same way as CPTED plays a multidisciplinary role in enabling women to be liberated, to be equal, to perform equally, to be treated equitably, to be, actually the 50% of the population that they're meant to be. My submission. Thank you.
So CPTED actually gives that tool and opportunity for women to have that equality and more in controlling and influencing the spaces they live and work.
I think it certainly helps, Tim. A safer community equals more women's participation in the community, and I think CPTED is a significant support for helping that community become safer, which in turn means more female participation in all parts of the community.
Yeah, and through the empowerment that CPTED give to communities and women, I think that if women feel safe in control of the community, or what happens in the community, I think will be more able to participate in other instances where they can say and what they think and about the problems and issues that they have in the daily basis.
Yes, I also want to agree that for social change and the empowerment of women through the CPTED methodology is very strategic, because CPTED methodology is a systematized common sense most of the time, but in a very organized way. So it gives women a tool, a very concrete and real tool to empower themselves and to raise the voices and make the social change that is very needed.
Well, that shows that there is a clear role. What do you, as a panel, think are perhaps the next steps for CPTED practitioners to ensure those women's voices are heard?
I think understanding the context of wherever it is that you're working in, whether you're working in your home community or whether you're a consultant who's working somewhere else, is to really ensure that if you don't understand that personally, that you're connected with somebody that does.
So it's very clear. Anybody else want to add to that? If not, we'll go on. So we can clearly see within the ICA, we have very clear women practitioners and experts. How can we get more women involved in CPTED, do you think? That's in the kind of professional side.
I would say it needs to be included in the academics. So within the architectural schools, within the planning schools, within the urban design schools, but also even further than that in police services, so that they understand you know, something that's beyond straight enforcement. I know that's a broad brush statement, but it's not just it's not just planning and architecture, but it's a lot of other professionals could benefit from that as well. Landscape architects, even sociologists. I think most people could benefit from it, and those professions in particular understanding how that fits. You can design a building, looks fabulous, looks great. It's another you know, Sydney Opera House, but if it doesn't function, if it's not safe, people won't want to go there. If your downtown isn't safe, it doesn't matter how good your roads are, or you know, how many great activities you have down there. People may not come.
Absolutely. How is that reflected in your other areas of the world, Manjari? Yes. How about in Asia and India?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree with Elizabeth more. And this is something that our organization has been advocating for fiercely. And we have been successful in introducing CPTED in the curriculum of some of the leading architectural schools, but it's a very limited impact and it's a long, long way to go. But yes, I completely agree that this is not just limited to architecture also. It has to be something which happens across many, many disciplines. Like Elizabeth said, it has to go into so many aspects of social, criminal, and architectural and design philosophies, and be embedded in that for it to really bear fruit, definitely. And the important thing there, I think the elemental thing there is to understand or drive home the point that this is also an aspect that impacts crime. It is a building, when being built, is not only impacting the environment and the ecology and the sustainability and the green building and how the global warming is affected by a building, blah, blah, and the other, but also the aspect of the immediate impact a single building has on its neighborhood, on its context. So we have regulations about how a building sits in its plot of land, and how high and how much area and how much floor area ratio, and what are the sustainability factors. You have to put solar panels and you have to have energy efficiency. But this social efficiency is a burning need, and probably if we don't attend to it, it's going to become as large a worry as the global warming is today. So this is something which is much more immediate and much more clear and present danger that needs to be addressed. Most of the people don't know that a building also impacts its urban context by way of crime. So that is a very, very important message that needs to be sent out urgently.
Okay, thank you, Manjari. I'm well aware now that I've only perhaps got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to take this quick opportunity to thank an exceptionally big thank you to all our panelists and their views and their experience and sharing their messages. Also to thank you all the participants who came. I'm going to perhaps give all of our participants about 10-20 seconds, a key last message you'd like to go across. Then I'll thank you all again and we'll have some final messages from the ICA. So perhaps who would like to lead off in your 15-20 seconds? We're losing time, so I'm going to put on Manjari.
I'll go. So my last message is that though we call this webinar CPTED for Women, but the important thing is that CPTED or works for women or men or anybody only when everybody who is touched by women. So it would be men, it would be children, it would be seniors, it would be families, it would be communities, it would be practically the whole human race has to contribute for CPTED to really work for women. So it has to be a concerted, all-out effort And that's when CPTED can really benefit women. And then it does not remain for women alone. The benefits are going to be reaped by mankind at large. That's it.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you, Manjari. Elizabeth, now you're down to 10 seconds.
I would say for practitioners or new practitioners or people who think that this might work for their community is that increase your knowledge, understand your community really well, get out of the office, walk around your community, see what's happening. And for those of us that have training, ensure that you're being comprehensive and inclusive, and find out from some of those other groups that potentially aren't normally at your meetings. Like, look at your meetings, ask your community that you're dealing with, who's not here, who needs to be included, why are they not here, and how can we get them in here? And again, as Manjari said, it's good for the entire community, and everybody should participate. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Melissa, and then we'll give our last word to our president. So Melissa, very quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I think that the last idea that I want to put into the audience is that CPTED is a really flexible tool that is reinforced with another strategic programs for get better the social aspect of a city. And because it's a really flexible methodology, we can build projects with a lot of different perspective. And I think that CPTED have this ability of conquer or reunite these different society, different groups of society, and build cities that are more gender inclusive.
Thank you. Macarena, to take us out.
Yes, very quick, Dr. Tim Pascoe. I believe a very relevant idea to highlight is that CPTED, well applied, for that purpose you can certify it by ICA, by the way, but CPTED, well applied, should help to get a harmonic behavior and coexistence among any gender in urban space. And more than talking about a woman's perspective or a man's perspective, we are talking about a human being perspective. We want to have safe cities all around the world. We know our cities are in crisis, and we are sure that CPTED can help in that purpose to increase quality of life, to
Okay, I think we just lost Maca at the end.
Back to you.
Back to us. Well, I'm just going to thank you all again. Thank you, the panelists, for being very kind with me. Thank you for all the time and experience. Thank you for all our participants. I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Manjari, who's going to take us out.
Manjari, you're muted.
So, Manjari, you're muted. Have we got our last video to finish?
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I was muted and speaking away. So just to, for the last remarks, I will like to share with our viewers that you can join us. We will be sharing a post-webinar survey, which you will receive automatically. It will be generated. And once you fill in this survey and respond to it, you will be getting the attendance certificate on completion of the post-webinar survey. And the link will be shared at the conclusion of this webinar. You can also join us at the link given on your screens, www.cpted.net.membership. And you can come to us for individual certification for CPTED professionals at ICCP. And we also do CPTED course accreditation program for CPTED course developers across the world. So you can reach us on the link on your screen. You please stay connected, follow us, and stay connected on our different social media as on your screens. And I would now, with the permission of the President, like to close the webinar for today. All the viewers will be sent a recording, a link to the recording. Those of you who could not join us, they will also be, if you've registered with us, will receive a link, and we welcome you to stay connected and follow us with all our webinars and newsletters in the future. Thank you so much to our viewers for your attention, your time, and we hope to keep bringing you better webinars. Please stay connected and fill in your personal details and personal opinions in the post-webinar survey. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Goodbye from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Nice to see you.